This video has a grammar focus and the focus is simple sentences. Now a lot of people might think for something that's called simple sentences, why does that kind of writing feel so confusing? Why do I feel like I'm pulling my hair out when I'm helping my child write simple sentences? You might not have heard the expression simple sentences, but it's actually the very first kind of sentence that children learn to write. Now I'm just going to take some time and draw out the success criteria for writing a good simple sentence. Now, one of the main aspects is the fact that you need one clause. Now, that word you might not be too familiar with unless you work in education. Now, a clause is a unit of writing that generally includes a subject and a verb. If that still sounds confusing, we'll unpick that a bit more later. Now, the word subject is actually coming up right away. And when we're talking about a sentence with a subject, we're talking about who or what is that sentence mostly about? Because every sentence is going to be about a person or something or a situation. What is it mostly about? Very important, capital letters, something that teachers pull their hair out time and time again. Children don't use capital letters and they need to use them all the time. And punctuation. Every single sentence needs to be correctly demarcated with some form of punctuation at the end. Now let's just think about, before we even grow into become writers, we first of all need to go back and think about our very first language experiences. Now children generally around the age of 2 onwards start to use their first words, and it's at this point when the very early interventions need to happen to ensure that children can speak correctly. If they can speak well, they end up being good writers. Now a child might start off by just saying a single word like food. Now we want to be encouraging children to use full sentences. I would like something to eat, because that's essentially what the child means. Not accepting one word. To start off with, completely fine, but we really want to be encouraging that full fluent sentence, because this will then lead into their writing. So when children first start school and their first experiences of writing sentences, they will quite often look at a picture and consider what the picture is showing them, what is it portraying. Now in this picture I hope you can see that I'm trying to draw a picture of a cat, and you would have a conversation with the child about this. What's this cat doing? What does it look like? Where is it sat? And from that we could generate the cat sat on the mat. And I would insist children count out those words. Now there are 6 words in the cat sat on the mat. Really breaking it apart, we're going to look at the first word, the. That needs a capital letter. It's the very first word we are writing down. That's how we've got 6 words altogether. Our second word is cat. What's the next one? The cat sat. That's our third word. 3 more to go. On, word 4, the mat, which is our last word. It needs a full stop. Now we've got the twice. It might be worth having the conversation. Why does that one have a capital letter and that one not? And we definitely need our full stop. Children start off with doing massive full stops that look like raisins. Give them time to practice doing nice, small, neat full stops. Now I'm going to go in now and actually pull apart some terminology here. If your child's not ready for this, you can simply skip past. So we've got determiners there. Determiners go in front of nouns. We've got nouns here. We've actually got 2. We've got cat and mat. I tell children, remember, noun, name, both begin with an N. The word sat is a doing word, it's a verb. And now the word on, which is one that children seem to forget quite often, we call these prepositions. They tell the reader the positioning of something, where it is. Now, those kind of words I'm going to do separate videos on, but that is just skimming past. Those terms children will need to know by the end of their primary education. Now this is a good example of a simple sentence. If we look back here, it has got one clause, a single subject, a capital letter and correct punctuation at the end. Now here we've got our subject, which is the cat. We've got one clause, we've got our capital letter and our full stop. One simple sentence. Now I'm going to show how you can progress this even further, because writing does not always look like that. Now we could take our first simple sentence, and with our full stop at the end of it, we're going to add another simple sentence. Now because I've called the cat to start with, I'm going to start this sentence with the pronoun of he. I've used that in place. We've got 2 capital letters, 2 full stops, because we've got 2 sentences. 2 simple sentences. Your number of capital letters and full stops must match your sentences. Now, this is showing how sentences progress, because we don't just have one kind of sentence. And as children move through the school, they'll be expected to use these joining words, which are called conjunctions. The word and is probably the first conjunction children come into contact with, and it's a way of joining together 2 simple sentences. Now, I will do a separate video on this, but in that situation, we call that a compound sentence. You've taken two things, you've made a new mixture, just like you make a compound in science. Now I'm going to outline an activity you can do with your child. Quite often, in the very early years and in year one, children might come home with homework where they have to write simple sentences. Or it might just be an activity you'd like to do apart from school with your child, just to help them develop their writing skills. So first of all, you're going to get your child to think of a sentence. You're going to get them to say it. You could give them a picture of something, a picture of an animal, something that they like. Get them to say it. What can they see? Get them to count the individual words. Just like we did with the cat sat on the mat, and then the final stage, getting them to write it. Make sure they have all the tools they have before they write it so they can feel confident. So say it, count it, write it. So this is something you could do. You could very simply draw an animal. I hope you can see from my doodles that this is turning out to be a bee. I've just chosen a bee. Animals are quite a good way of engaging children to write, but you know your child, you know what enthuses them, what they're most into. So get them to say it. What can they see? What's the bee doing? The bee is flying could be a sentence they could say. This is just an example. So how many words are there? There are 4. The bee is flying. The first word, the. Bee, second word, is, third, fourth, flying. We know we need that full stop and capital letter. Do not allow them not put that. It's non-negotiable. They have to have it. Get them to write it, get them to check it. Now, this is something you can do if you think your child needs more challenge. Get them to become editors. I get children in my class have a purple pen. Can they add in a word to make this sentence more impressive? In this case, we've added in an adjective, the busy bee. Now, all terminology aside, that is actually very, very basic sentence writing. And by practicing with children at home, hopefully you'll end up with less fuss and more learning, so they can become confident, competent writers as they move through the primary years. So as ever, thank you very much for watching.